Thank you, Joel. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Lovely to see all of you on this fine spring day. You can really feel that it's springtime now, can't we? I knew it was spring this week because my kids wanted to plant things. They wanted to plant everything. Mia received a packet of columbine seeds for her birthday, and she wanted to run home right away and plant them. And first thing that I do, well, she's already opened it, and she's holding it upside down. Luckily, the flap is keeping the seeds from falling out, but I'm like, no. So I grab it away from her, and then I spill the seeds out onto the sidewalk. And I've got the baby strapped to my belly, so I'm trying to pick up all the itty-bitty little bitty seeds and put them back in the packet. And by that time, Annalise is grumpy, so I have to go inside. But Mia is so impatient. She was waiting, Mommy, when can we plant the seeds? When can we plant the seeds? And I'm like, just wait. I just need to get Annalise asleep, and then we can, plant the seeds. And finally, out of the corner of my eye, I just see her grab the seed packet and run out the door. And I'm like, no, wait, Mia. And I catch her. She's about to throw the seeds out into the yard. I'm like, okay, Mia, you want the seeds to grow, right? And she's like, yes, that's why I'm planting them, obviously. Okay. So if we want the seeds to grow into beautiful big flowers, then we have to plant them the right way. We have to dig up the soil and make it nice and soft. We have to water them. We can't put them in the yard because Daddy will mow over them. We have to put them in the garden. So I finally talked her down from it, She was like, okay, all right, fine. And eventually the next day we were able to plant the seeds. And then the next day, Nathan has an apple seed. He sprouted an apple seed from one of his apples, and so he wanted to plant an apple tree. He made a little cardboard sign and everything to mark it. So he was asking me, well, how do I plant an apple seed? I said, or he asked me, how deep do I plant an apple seed? And I think about 2 inches is probably good to get about 2 inches. So a few minutes later, he's like, Mommy, is this good? And he's got the seed in this little bitty hole about 2 inches deep. I was like, well, that looks about right, but if you just plant it there like that, then the roots won't have anywhere to go because it's so hard. You have to dig deep underneath the 2 inches and make it all nice and soft so the roots can go down. And then you put the seed in, and then you cover it, and then you water it. So he's like, okay. So for myself, growing up in Missouri, and grew up gardening all the time, I don't really think about it, but I realize my kids don't really know how to plant seeds yet, so I have to educate them. But anyway, it's been fun, but it had me thinking about the topic of sowing seeds, and I'd like to share with you the parable of the sower. This is from Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 9, and 19 through 23. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was so shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, But the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. So this refers obviously not to just plants in the springtime, but to our life, our hearts, and what kind of fruit we want to bear in our lives, and what kind of seeds we want to sow in our hearts. So, of course, we want to be the good soil. We want to be the good soil that when we hear the word, we understand it. And we want it to bear fruit in our lives. But it's not just enough to say, I want to be good soil. Because as I learned in educating my kids, we have to prepare the soil. So how do we prepare the soil of our hearts? Here's another, that's from a previous sermon. Forgot to take that out. This is a quote from Hosea chapter 10, verse 12. Plant the good seeds of righteousness, and you will have a harvest, and you will harvest a crop of love. Plow up the hard ground of your hearts, for now is the time to seek the Lord, that he may come and shower righteousness upon you. So to prepare good soil, we have to plow up the hard ground of our hearts. As I was growing up in Missouri, very rural Missouri, there were two sounds that I constantly heard outside the window. Even though it was a very peaceful, serene place, there was always the sound of a chainsaw, and there was always the sound of the rototiller. My dad's garden is quite possibly the most beautiful, most successful garden in all of southeast Missouri. It bears fruit without fail every single year. Even in the worst droughts, when everybody else has given up on their gardens and they're all dried up and withered, our garden is still producing. Even if it means that, like, my dad is rationing how much water we can drink from our well so that there can be water for the garden. And you know, he's always, there will be corn for the 4th of July picnic. He's committed to it. So he does whatever it takes to make the garden grow the way that he wants it to grow. I actually have a picture of, this is actually, in the forefront is more like my mom's flower gardens and herbs and strawberries, but all that stuff in the back is just like a corner of my dad's garden. There's peas, radishes, spinach, kale, kohlrabi, corn, squash, asparagus, tomatoes, beans, peppers, cantaloupe, watermelon, pumpkins. I mean, it just goes on and on. Like anything you could think of that you'd want, he has it growing in the garden. So, but I never kind of took it for granted growing up that we would just have a nice garden, but I've realized that there's a lot of effort and a lot of preparation that takes to growing a beautiful garden. And it's the same thing for us. To grow a beautiful garden in our hearts and to bear fruit in our life, we also have to invest the time. We have to invest the preparation. We have to till up the ground. And the first thing that you do before you plant a garden is you have to till up the hard ground. And the way I take this in our life is that we have to create an atmosphere in our hearts, an atmosphere in our life that God can work in, so that when we receive the word, there is a place for it to grow. So how do we soften our hearts? How do we prepare the ground of our hearts? I think that this really entails prayer. For myself, I know that when I can really pray, then it's not about me anymore. We forget about ourselves, forget about what I'm wanting, and I focus my thoughts, I focus my heart on God, and I focus my heart on the world, and I focus my heart on my family. And that in itself breeds, I think, compassion and empathy and a heart of love that goes beyond just myself. And that is like cracking up that hard ground. Another way that I think that we can plow up the hard ground of our hearts is through practicing the Word and practicing our faith. If we are already in a habit of doing the things that are right, and we're already in a habit of going beyond ourselves to love others, serving others, then when we hear God's words, or when we have an opportunity to do something great, then it's almost natural for us to do it. But if we're thinking about ourselves, then when the opportunity comes along, it's like the hard ground, isn't it? It's hard to get out of ourselves to do something more. It's hard to bear fruit. So to till up the hard ground, we need to pray, and we need to live the life of faith that we want to live. However, just preparing the ground isn't enough. Once we plant the seeds, we also need fertilizer and water. We have to fertilize the ground. We have to water the plants to help them to continue to grow beyond just the planting. This I really take to mean as reading God's Word. It's like a constant food and a constant water that we need to really understand what the Word means. We have to create an environment of that. I was thinking about, I think that many of you heard James Powell's service last Sunday, and it was simply fascinating, all the experiences he's had with prayer and with reading God's words and with practicing a principled lifestyle. I think there's a lot we can gain from that. I think a lot of it was really illustrated, the not just, sometimes I feel like it's just a condition that we do, but he really showed that there's a spiritual value that has a real effect on our life when we pray, when we read God's words, and when we can turn away from bad habits and do good actions. And Mike also wanted to let you know that James Powell mentioned how he listened to the Divine Principle like a voice track, MP3 or something. He's working on getting that, and he'll send it out to all of you later so that you can just listen to the Word. Yeah, James Powell was saying, even just having it playing, even if it's not what you're focusing on, just having it in the background creates a beautiful spiritual environment. So this is, I hope, one way that we can help you to fertilize and water your life. And another thing, once you have your plants growing, if you fertilize and water your garden, at least a physical garden, you'll also be fertilizing and watering your weeds. So not only do we need to till up the ground, not only do we need to water and fertilize the ground, we also need to take care of the weeds. And in the Bible verse, it was talking about how the weeds are like thorns, the distractions of our life that choke out the good things that we were working on, investing into. We get caught up in the distractions of our earthly life. And also, I think it can also refer to the habits that we have that don't serve us, the habits that we have that take us away from our purpose. It could be a habit simple as some of us have a habit of reacting in anger and frustration when things don't go our way. Some of us have a habit of being addicted to our phones. Or like James Powell was saying, he gave this illustration of somebody's on the computer, and they're on the computer too much. The computer's not a bad thing, but there's other things that they want to do in their life, and their ancestors are pushing them to do it, but they're so caught up in their habit that they just can't turn away from the computer and go do the things that they need to do. Maybe some of you have habits like that in your life. Anyway, there are lots of habits. I don't need to go into all of them, but I'm pretty sure that we can all identify for ourselves what we feel. Sometimes, it's like, I probably really shouldn't be doing this right now, but what the heck, I'm going to do it anyway. So whatever that is for you, you can identify it. And work on pulling up those weeds. My dad always, between the rows, to keep the weeds from growing up in the garden, he takes hay bales and he breaks them apart and he covers all the weeds with hay, and they don't get the sun, it chokes them out. So what kind of good habits can we lay down to choke out the bad habits? The last part of this verse that I really like, I'm going to go back. there we go, is like a promise from God. The person who has the good soil, this is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. So I feel like that God is not just telling us to be good people, not just to prepare a good soil, not just listen to my word, but it's a promise. If you do this, then you will produce a crop. There will be fruits in your life. You will see it 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold. I'll take 2-fold, But God is promising more. If we can take in his word, if we can take the opportunities in our life to do good, if we have that good environment of prayer and reading God's words and turning away from our negative habits, then there will be results in your life. It's a good promise. So I also encourage you to look at yourself, be a little bit introspective, and ask yourself, what kind of results am I getting right now? Maybe not results in all areas of your life, but is there progress? Do I feel like I'm moving in a good direction? If you're sitting there thinking, maybe I feel a little bit stuck right now, that's okay. This is the springtime. This is the time to sow. This is the time to get may not get the results right now, but this is the time to sow. This is the time to prepare your heart. And with that being done, then there will be results. It's God's promise. I have one more quote to share with you. This is, I go through everything again. This is a quote from our true mother. Let us constantly strive to spread true love. Let us sow the seeds of true love throughout our lives. So just an encouragement and reminder that this is the real kind of fruit that we want. Of course, we want to see fruit in our jobs. We want to see the results in our pay raises. But ultimately, what really gives us the most reward is this result of true love in our heart, in our families, that we share with our community, and seeing the results in the nation and the world. So, and one thing that Mother says here is throughout our lives, we have to make effort little by little every day. It's not something we just plant one day and that it will, grow up and there will be true love. But it's something that, when our children are small, we have to plant seeds of true love. When they're in middle school, we have to plant the seeds of true love. When they're grown up and they're having their own children, we still have to keep planting seeds of of true love. And I feel like that's the kind of heart that God has for us. I think sometimes God tries to plant a seed and it's the rocky soil, or it falls on the path. We don't always get it. But even so, God will come back. He'll plant another seed of true love in our life. So if you feel like maybe you missed an opportunity, don't give up. God's coming back to plant more seeds of true love in your life. And it will bear fruit. God promises us it will bear fruit. So let's work on plowing up this hard ground of our hearts. Let's work on softening it with love. Let's work on reaching out rather than reaching in, creating the environment for God to plant the seeds. And then let's water the seeds. Let's continue to read God's words. Let's continue to make good efforts, good habits, pull out those weeds. And then God's promise is waiting for us. So that's what I want to share with you today. Thank you.